It's time to look at some more changes from the recent balanced data slate, and we are coming now for the truly chaotic forces of chaos in the warp-fueled monstrosities of the Chaos Demons. These guys have had quite a few somewhat innocuous but fairly substantial changes in the data slate, with some of their key important kind of army defining rules added to a few of the war scrolls and changed in their index, which really will make a big difference to their overall gameplay. The rules that got changed is in their main army rule, the Shadow of Chaos. Now this comprises two parts, and the Demonic Terror section has had a paragraph added to state that in addition to subtracting 1 from battle shock tests and taking D3 mortal wounds on a failure when an enemy unit is within your Shadow of Chaos, they also get this negative effect if they are within 6 inches of one of your greater demons, and this counts as the unnamed and the named versions, so your Bloodthirsters and Scarbrand, for example. So the long and short of it is that your greater demons now emanate their own aura of the Shadow of Chaos, and what this does is it makes your greater demons a really effective unit now for moving up and debuffing the enemy even more so that they fail more of their battle shock tests, and then when they do fail them, they take that little bit of chip damage on top. In a manner directly related to that, the Greater Demons got an addition to their own datasheets which reflects what I just said, so they do, as I mentioned, generate the Shadow of Chaos aura 6 inches from themselves, much like Be'lakor did beforehand. But what that means is that now when a friendly unit is within 6 inches of your Bloodthirsters, your Great Unclean Ones, or Shalaxi or Kairos, those friendly units now count as being in the Shadow of Chaos. So they get the buff where they add 1 to their leadership, and then they also have a chance to get some models back and heal up a bit when they do pass their battle shock thanks to demonic manifestation. So Greater Demons have had a really big glow up just in terms of bringing this buff to further places around the battlefield, because before it was very much reliant on Be'lakor or controlling objectives, so it could be quite hard to spread it. Now you really can much more easily get that aura where you need it to give you the buffs when you need it most, and it does affect quite a lot in the army. It is sort of your big army defining rule, so it impacts a substantial amount. Things like your enhancements, if nothing else, all get a nice buff if the bearer of the enhancement is within your Shadow of Chaos. So things like Argath now grant you +2 attacks and strength to your character at all times, whilst other ones like the Endless Gift, which is the Nurgle one, grants you a possible 4-up Feel No Pain on your Great Unclean One now. And it doesn't just end with the enhancements, because a lot of your stratagems are also tied to the Shadow of Chaos, and some of them are either better or flat out only usable within the Shadow of Chaos. Things like Warp Surge giving you a very nice advance and charge, which will of course now be always on for your Greater Demons because they are always in their own aura. So all of your Greater Demons can now use that to advance and charge, which is really strong. So just that small addition to their army rule really does make a significant difference. It really is a very big buff that will mean getting those powerful boosts and abilities off a lot easier to do, because before you would have really had to play around and make sure you had the objectives so your Shadow of Chaos was spreading, whereas now you can just set your Greater Demon up in the right place where you need it and buff the units around him, or if you just want those buffs on your Greater Demon, he's always going to be in the aura because he emanates it himself. In addition, there has been some other small changes. The detachment rule of Warp Rifts has had a small change which ties in to the Shadow of Chaos as well, but it means that when you use your Deep Strike ability for your demon units, they can now be set up 6 inches away from enemies if they are set up wholly within 6 inches of your Greater Demons. Of course, that is because they will count as being in that Shadow of Chaos, so they can now set up 6 inches from enemy units rather than 9, and now you can much more easily and reliably get those charges in. It massively fixes a big issue, which is getting your melee focused demons into combat, and it allows you to do some really nice tricks where you can deep strike in a greater demon, and then he will be set up on the board, emanating that aura, and then you can deep strike in a unit of bloodletters, put them wholly within 6 inches of him, and then because they are being set up within 6 inches of your Shadow of Chaos, they can be set up 6 inches from enemies. So you can put your greater demon 9 inches away, and then your little demons or Scarbrand or something 6 inches away, and get a really easy charge off without your opponent being able to do much about it. So those two changes, the army and the detachment changes alone, make demons much more powerful and usable. But it doesn't end there, because on top of those really nice army and detachment changes, there are also some fairly substantial points drops to go along with them. So Be'lakor has dropped from 350 down to 325, which is not huge, but it is definitely a welcome change. Khorne gets a solid selection of drops, with the Skull Cannon dropping down to 95, which is a 10-point drop. Bloodthirsters drop a mighty 15 points, going down to 305, which is really good considering they were already relatively solid and have now been buffed even further thanks to those changes to the Shadow of Chaos. So they have just got much better and a little bit cheaper. Both varieties of Demon Princes drop to 190 for the regular one or 180 for the flying variant. I actually really like the non-flying version, especially at this new lower price. He's still got that solid 8-inch move, but that stealth aura I really like. It's really good for keeping your units that are on the board alive as you move up, and can really help you set up this mid-game 1-2 punch with your units that are on the board getting ready to charge, and any deep striking units dropping in and getting a potential 6-inch charge as well. For the other gods, we also see similar drops of around the 10 to 15 point mark. Things like Demonettes and Fiends and Plague Drones all drop. The Soul Grinder also drops to 180. It's still not amazing, but at least it's a little bit more usable now. And I mean, none of them are super huge changes. I don't think unless you really lean into spamming one of these units, you're going to be able to get yourself a whole extra unit or anything. But for my demon list, for example, which is very Khorne heavy, and I run a couple of Bloodthirsters, that nets me an extra 30 points just from the drops here. So I can now fit in Argath into my lists, whereas before I may not have been able to. So it could just help you get that enhancement you maybe couldn't bring before, or maybe if you really play around with it and get the most out of it, maybe an extra small HQ, something like a 65-point Bloodmaster, you may be able to fit in now, whereas you couldn't before. So they are relatively small changes in terms of the points, but they are potentially very useful ones, and at the very least they will get you an enhancement or something. And not to mention the fact that the changes, the points drops feel even better because of the fact that your detachment and your army buffs have got substantially better as well. So you are getting a slight bit more in terms of points, but also a lot more in terms of usability and rules. All in all, for an army that was already reasonably okay, I mean not top table, but definitely sitting in the middle of the pack quite comfortably, this has just been a couple of genuinely huge buffs to their overall effectiveness, and especially for the greater demons, which were already a very good pick in the army. They are just now even better than they were before. You can now get your Shadow of Chaos around the board much more easily, bring some of those really nice buffs and stratagem uses to more of your forces, be less reliant on controlling the objectives on the board, as well as having a few more points just to play around with for things like enhancements. It just in general makes your army much better at what it wants to do, which is debuffing the enemy, letting you get up close as quickly as possible, and just bringing that greater level of control and board control to pretty much all of your units. So that is the Demons of Chaos. What are your thoughts on them with the new data slate, and how will you be making the most of the new Shadow of Chaos buffs on your greater demons? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.